Greetings everyone and welcome to Rise of the Ronin benchmark. These are the settings that I'm going to use for the most of this video until specified otherwise. Unfortunately, because I'm using 60 Hz monitor, the game only allows 60 FPS frame rate limit and there is no way to unlock it, unfortunately. Nvidia Reflex is unavailable for some reason, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because of 60 FPS limit. Now for the most part I'm going to use DLSS at balanced mode. I manually reduce the sharpness to 0 because at default it comes with 1 and it's way too sharp. All the main graphical settings are completely maxed out, except for a few, like I disabled motion blur, which doesn't really affect FPS but affects visual clarity. I left depth of field enabled, but I disabled chromatic aberration and noise filter, which is basically film grain, and ray tracing is enabled, which is only reflection, but still. For the first part of this video, I'm going to use just a normal open world section, because in some areas it acts like Dark Souls game and the map size, and here it's more like Assassin's Creed games, well, newer Assassin's Creed games. Now the hot topic of this game are probably system requirements to run this game well, especially. And as you can see, even 3090 with such visual clarity and fidelity, I don't know, hitting 40s, 50s, it's not really looking good. And I'm using balanced DLSS, not even native 4K. And visuals, as I mentioned, are not really impressive, to be honest, especially in terrain and environment detail. The lighting seems to be fine, or sometimes even impressive, but the assets and pop-in is really heavy. And look at that, the CPU utilization is actually crazy, at least for such visual fidelity. So typically for open world games, the CPU is quite important, but I think it's unproportional in this case. I'm not entirely sure what CPU is doing here, because there is not much going on. Well, I guess there are few NPCs, but still the world is not really dynamic and everything seems to be pretty much static. So again, I'm just a little bit puzzled by this whole thing, because the optimization seems to be the weakest point of this game. And add insult to the injury, this game takes around 162 gigabytes of hard drive space, which is again kinda astounding, to be honest. The textures are not really impressive or even mediocre. Asset quality is not really great as well, so it's a total mystery, I have to say. And the last bad thing I wanted to mention about this one is that there's some kind of strange motion fluidity issues. If you are not hitting the selected FPS limit, so for example if you chose 30 FPS and you are hitting 20, you get these weird camera jitters, and they are not really stutterers, as you can see in my frame time graph. I guess there are some kind of conflict with physics which are actually tied to the FPS, and that's another another bad thing about this game, but I just cannot not mention it. And even though you are hitting, for example, like here 50, 40 FPS or 55 and not 60, you're still getting those camera jitters. And again, it's not feeling great when playing, even with the controller. And as soon as you hit that stable 60 FPS limit or whatever limit you chose, only then the game feels smooth. I typically wait a little bit for game patches to come on new games, but to be honest on this one, I kinda don't believe that it's going to be patched that much. It's a direct console port, and those issues I mentioned are very hard to fix, especially physics tied to the FPS, which I don't think you can just patch it out. I think you have to do some kind of whole game engine rework and then recompile whole project. I don't know. I'm not game developer, but I imagine that's a lot of work to fix. And because this game wasn't really successful on PC platform, at least, I believe there are only about 2000 reviews on Steam at the moment, with very mixed results on reviews, as well as sales. So, considering all those things, I don't think it's going to be patched a lot. And because of that, I suspect this game is going to stay like this forever, unfortunately. Because I do like games to be fixed and patched. And I never wish for games to fail, because this is one of my biggest hobbies and I really do enjoy gaming, so I do not wish bad for this game, or any for that fact. Now the game itself, for the most part, seems to be way more up my alley than Dark Souls games, because it does have a decent story, it's a little bit easier game in general, and it has open world, which I do enjoy actually. But still, the levels of some bosses are quite difficult, and for me it's not really always a pleasure to experience, especially when you die a lot. So if you die, you go through whole level and play again and repeat and so on, and sometimes and quite often it's not really my thing. But I do appreciate slightly different spin on Souls-like game, and I think for the most part it's quite decent, other than my mentioned issues and my personal preferences. I think I'll get back to you on the last section of this video, which is going to be CPU testing in Yokohama city. I was thinking how should I present this benchmark part, and I think I won't do side by side because gameplay is not really synced that well. So I'll just show you one after the other. At first, I'm showing you with my previously shown DLSS balanced preset. And the second is going to be at ultra performance to alleviate the GPU usage and put some load on the CPU. And as you can see, it doesn't really stutter for me, and I suspect that it's very sensitive to memory timings. And if you manually tune your memory, it should perform quite well actually, even in this town, which is very demanding. The CPU utilization is very high. So for the CPU at least, it's definitely not an issue for my 5950X, and it doesn't really show any CPU bottlenecks, and it's mostly GPU bound, at least if you tune your memory. So I think I'll show you pretty much everything I can, and it took me a while actually, because you have to progress through the game a little bit, and there are no saves to download from the internet, so everything had to be done manually. And I think I'll leave you to the benchmark or what's left of that. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye for now.
Well, at least it was just like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.なんだよ。何だ。